Welcome back. Today marks the 46th anniversary of Black Wednesday in South Africa. On the 19th of October, this was in 1977, the apartheid government enforced a ban on two major anti-apartheid publications. At the time, The World and The Weekend World. Dozens of journalists and activists were also detained. Let's discuss the current state of media freedom in South Africa. Bring in Program Manager at Advocacy, Lobbying and Litigation at Media Monitoring Africa, Azola Dayile. A very good evening to you, Azola. Good to speak to you. So, decades on, we're now in a democratic dispensation in South Africa. How do you assess the extent to which media is free in this country today?
Thank you very much, Timikile, for having me on the show. That's a very good question, and there are many studies out there that have been conducted to really assess the state of the media in South Africa today. So, from one of these studies done by Reporters Without Borders, finds that South Africa actually on the continent stands at second position, only just after Namibia, our neighbors, in terms of the Global World Press Index. But then globally, we are at number 25 for 2023. Which is 10 places up from the previous year, 2022, where we were at 35. So what this basically indicates, based on this research, of which we agree with as Media Monitoring Africa, because it's the same thing that we've seen in our own research, is that really there is sort of like a healthy media environment in South Africa, obviously protected under the freedom of expression clause in the constitution of the country. And yeah, there is a healthy media play in the country, definitely.
But it hasn't been all smooth sailing, has it not? We remember the Don't Buy City Press, Don't Buy campaign led by the ANC about a decade or so ago, I believe. There have also been bans on journalists, specific journalists, for example, attending EFF presses, etc. And threats allegedly by even business people made against journalists who were doing certain investigative work. How alarming, how concerning is that, even though it must be stated these are a very sporadic, isolated events?
Of course, these are very, very, very dangerous in terms of putting pressure on journalists to self-censure, and obviously it doesn't bode well for media freedom. It dampens the quality of our journalism and our media, and because journalism is the cornerstone of democracy, it kind of also sort of undermines or seek to undermine our democracy. You are correct to say that it has not been all rosy, and I definitely do agree with that. And just beyond just journalists being banned from attending pressers, or being banned from attending presses and other things, we have also seen a rise in the harassment of journalists, both off and online rather, where it is leaders of political parties and their followers who are constantly harassing journalists and making it difficult for them to do their work. Moreover, or added to that, we also know that disinformation and misinformation also pose a threat to the credibility of journalism and make media freedom. I don't know how to put it, but kind of undermines media freedom and democracy at the very same time. So you are correct to say that it has not all been rosy, but obviously these are, sporadic incidents that happens here and there. One incident in this year, two incidents in another year. So it's not really a concerted efforts, but we do see the concerted efforts though on social media platforms. There, it's definitely just
right. And something key that I want to pick up on, you mentioned credibility of the media globally. There is a sense that we have become less and less credible as a media, often accused of choosing sides. Propaganda is a word that's now recurring more often than not, regardless of where you are based or reporting from in the world. To what extent is the media itself to blame for the decline in public confidence in the work that we do, in the reporting that we put out?
It's very difficult, and it depends on which or what context you are in. For instance, currently what is happening, the Hamas Israeli war has also kind of shown exactly what you're saying, where we've seen, internationally, some news outlets, I don't know whether I'm allowed to mention them here, that have, taken a stance that is either pro-Israel or are accused of taking a stance that is pro-Palestine. We have seen that play out very much abroad and in other contexts. I don't think that has necessarily happened here in South Africa, but definitely, the public does, and I see these engagements on Twitter. The public do have this idea that either the public broadcaster is biased, or one or two of other publications are biased. They are propaganda. They are mouth tools of foreign funders and all those kind of things. But some of them, unfortunately, are not based on facts. It's speculation from news consumers and news readers, and are not based on facts. But there are instances really where journalists also do take sides. I mean, if the context themselves are fractured, it is very easy also for the news to also kind of play into those into the fractured socio-economic context of that particular country.
On the issue of taking sides, there is the interesting media debate, right? I think it's Christiana Manpoel who says as her motto, she's not neutral, but she's factual. So if there is a party in any scenario that is in the wrong and one party that is on the receiving end of the wrong, is it necessarily wrong for the media to state or report the story in that context, in that framing?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's very important that the journalist sticks to the actual facts of the thing, even though it comes across as taking sides. And this is the example I was actually making in my previous point, even though I didn't want to mention the names of the publications. But currently, Al Jazeera is probably going to be banned in Israel, particularly for reporting the facts of what is happening between, the conflict between Hamas and the Israeli government and the Israeli people themselves. And there are stations also that are very much pro-Israel, and they are not unapologetic about it, but also are not necessarily reporting on the factual situation that is happening in Gaza currently. And these include, your BBCs, your CNNs, that have explicitly decided to pick a side, and that obviously that goes on to dampen the credibility of journalism in itself, because at a later stage, when they actually go back to doing credible stories, people will point out to this particular scenario and say, but at this juncture, you had misled us and were reporting things that are not factual, babies being beheaded, all kinds of things that are actually found to have been mis and disinformation in the past week as it relates to the conflict in Gaza.
Thank you very much for your time. Azola Dayile, good to speak to you today about media freedom in South Africa and the rest of the world.